Hello everyone and welcome back to Rewilding the Future. In this video we continue our series on the last leopards of Europe. In the previous episodes we were in the Caucasus and in Georgia. Today we're moving a little further south into a country that sits exactly on the border between Europe and Asia, Turkey. Here, in a handful of remote mountains and forests, one of the rarest big cats on Earth is still holding on, the Anatolian or Persian leopard. Panthera pardus tulliana, the same subspecies as the Caucasian leopard of the wider region. Turkey is usually seen as an Asian country, but ecologically the story is more complicated. The northeastern mountains of Turkey, especially Artvin and the eastern Black Sea and Pontic Mountains, are connected directly to the Caucasus ecoregion, which many scientists treat as the natural southeastern border of Europe. Leopards that move along these ridges are part of the same population that reaches into Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and southern Russia. So when we talk about the last leopards of Europe, the tiny, fragile leopard population of Turkey is absolutely part of that story. For most of history, leopards were not a rare animal in Turkey. The subspecies we now call the Anatolian or Persian leopard once ranged across almost all of Anatolia, from the Aegean and Taurus Mountains in the west and south through central Anatolia to the high plateaus and rugged mountains of the east and southeast. We see this in archaeology and culture. In Neolithic sites like Haçlılar and Çatalhöyük, goddesses are shown sitting on leopards or holding leopard cubs, proof that these cats were a familiar and powerful presence in early Anatolia. For thousands of years they shared the landscape with lions, tigers, fallow deer, ibex, gazelles, and brown bears. They hunted wild goats on limestone cliffs, red deer and wild boar in oak and pine forests, and sometimes livestock around villages. But during the 19th and 20th centuries, everything changed. As firearms became widespread, leopards were shot as vermin and trophies. At the same time, forests were cleared, overgrazing became intense, and wild prey like ibex and deer declined. By the late 20th century, leopards had disappeared from most of western and southern Turkey. One famous animal was killed near Beypazarı, close to Ankara, in 1974, and for decades that individual was remembered as the last Anatolian leopard. Later, in 2013, another leopard was killed near Solmaz village in Diyarbakır province in the southeast. That incident shocked scientists because it proved leopards had survived longer than anybody expected, but it also showed how vulnerable they still were. By the early 2000s, many experts believed leopards in Turkey were either extinct or represented by just a few individuals at most. Geographically, most of Turkey is in Asia, and its leopard population is part of the broader West Asian population of leopards. But if we look at ecoregions instead of political borders, things look different. The Caucasus Mountains in the eastern Black Sea and Pontic Mountains, including northeastern Turkey around Artvin, form one continuous mountain arc. This arc is often treated as a distinct Caucasus ecoregion, recognized in European conservation instruments such as the Berne Convention and in Caucasus leopard strategies that include Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Russia, and the border mountains of Turkey. Camera trap records and tracks show that leopards still occasionally appear on the northeastern frontier of Anatolia, close to Georgia, even if we don't yet know whether those animals are permanent residents or wide-ranging males crossing the border. Ecologically, they are part of the same European Caucasian leopard network you've seen in the earlier episodes of this series. So for this video, I treat the leopards of Turkey, especially those in the north and northeast, as the southern edge of Europe's last leopard population. Now let's talk about numbers, because this is where things become both very interesting and very scary. At the range level, the subspecies Panthera pardus tulliana, Persian, Anatolian, Caucasian leopard, probably has 750 to 1,100 adult animals left, most of them in Iran, with smaller pockets in Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkmenistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Russia, Georgia, and other countries. For Turkey specifically, the best formal estimate from 2021 says fewer than 5 adult leopards in the whole country. That's how critical the situation is on paper. Since then, things have changed in one important way. Camera traps and thermal cameras have confirmed more individuals. By 2024, Turkey's wildlife authorities reported that at least 10 distinct Anatolian leopards had been captured on camera in multiple locations. The problem is that all 10 of these identified animals are males, not a single confirmed female yet, which is a huge warning sign for the population. And we also need to remember something important. Leopards are extremely secretive, solitary animals, and they are very hard to detect in the wild. Even in good habitat, you can walk for years and never see one. So the number of leopards we actually photograph or record is almost always lower than the true number out there in the mountains. So when I say in this video that Turkey probably has around 10 to 20 leopards left in 2025, that is a realistic but optimistic estimate. The hard evidence, like camera traps and confirmed kills, suggests at least 10 males, possibly a few more individuals that haven't been individually identified. But we still don't have clear proof of surviving females in Turkey, even though scientists strongly hope that a few females are hiding in remote mountains or moving back and forth from Iran and Iraq. In other words, in 2025, Turkey's leopard population is probably under 20 animals, maybe closer to 10, and almost all of the cats we can actually see are male. Without females, the population inside Turkey can't reproduce, which means the country depends on immigration from neighboring states for any chance of recovery. Even with locations kept secret for their protection, we can draw a rough map of where leopards still survive in Turkey. Field surveys and camera traps show that the heart of the current population is in the mountains along the Turkish-Iraqi border, especially around Mount Kudi in Şırnak province, and also in Mardin and Siirt. Multiple camera trap pictures and videos from 2018 onwards confirm at least one male leopard using the northern slopes of Mount Kudi, and earlier incidents, including the 2013 kill near Diyarbakir, support the idea of a tiny relict population here. Historical and modern records show leopard tracks and occasional sightings in the eastern Pontic Mountains and around Artvin on the Black Sea side of the Caucasus, right next to Georgia. Surveys between 1993 and 2002 found leopard footprints at multiple sites from the Çipan Mountains to Karsal Mountain, suggesting that some animals either survived or regularly entered Turkey from the Caucasus. More recent work has added new records in northeastern Anatolia, though it's still unclear whether these are resident animals or males moving along the transboundary ridge. These northeastern leopards are exactly the population that connects Turkey to Europe's Caucasus leopards. Historically, leopards were found in the Taurus and Aegean Mountains, including places like Termessos National Park and other western ranges, but today they're probably extinct in most of these areas. A few modern camera trap records from southwestern Turkey show that solitary males still wander there, but there is no sign of a stable breeding population. So, when we imagine leopards in Turkey in 2025, we should picture a handful of males scattered across several mountain systems, with one tiny core in the southeast and a few bridge animals in the north and northeast, linking Turkey to the rest of the Caucasus-Iranian metapopulation. When we talk about the future of leopards in Turkey, we also have to talk about food. A big cat can only survive if the landscape can feed it. Like other Persian leopards, the Anatolian leopard in Turkey is first of all a hunter of wild ungulates, wild-hoofed animals. In the mountains of southeastern and eastern Anatolia, that means especially bezoar goats on steep rocky slopes, wild boar rooting in oak scrub and forests, and where they still exist, roe deer, chamois, and occasionally red or fallow deer in richer forests. In the past, before heavy hunting and habitat loss, these prey animals were much more common across Turkey, and a leopard could move from ridge to ridge, following goat herds, deer trails, and boar tracks without crossing huge, empty areas. Today, those natural prey populations are often broken into small pockets, separated by villages, roads, overgrazed rangelands, and areas where wild ungulates have been hunted out. What we know from studies across the range of the Persian leopard is that 80 to 95% of the biomass in its diet comes from wild ungulates, like wild goat, wild sheep, and wild boar. Only when these start to disappear do leopards switch more often to smaller prey: hares, porcupines, foxes, birds like partridge, and finally to livestock and herding dogs, which creates conflict with people. In Turkey, this pattern is the same. In the most remote cliffs and forests, leopards still hunt wild goats, chamois, and wild boar, but in more disturbed landscapes they are pushed towards sheep, goats, and sometimes stray dogs. For a single adult male, a scattered prey base might be just enough to survive, especially if he is very mobile. But for a breeding population with females and cubs, you need something much richer. High densities of wild ungulates and safe hunting grounds where the cats are not constantly disturbed. So is the current prey base in Turkey enough? At the moment, the honest answer is only barely, and only in a few places. In many mountain areas, populations of wild goat, deer, and other large mammals have declined because of illegal hunting, habitat fragmentation, and competition with domestic livestock. That's one of the main reasons why Persian leopards are listed as endangered, and why prey depletion is recognized as a major threat to the subspecies across West Asia. If Turkey manages to seriously protect and rebuild its wild ungulate populations, for example, by creating strong no-hunting zones in key leopard mountains, restoring red and fallow deer where they have disappeared, and reducing poaching of wild goats and wild boar, then the country's landscapes could once again support not just a handful of wandering males, but a small, stable population of leopards with enough food to thrive. When we think about leopards in Turkey, we also have to remember that they are not alone at the top of the food chain. They share these mountains and forests with other large carnivores that hunt some of the same prey and compete for space, carcasses, and safe den sites. In the Caucasus-connected mountains of northeastern Turkey, places like Hatila Valley National Park above Artvin still hold a full community of large mammals: gray wolf, red fox, Eurasian lynx, brown bear, wild goat, chamois, roe deer, wild boar, and very quietly, leopard. In eastern Anatolia and the southeast, the picture is similar. Wolves, jackals, and sometimes striped hyenas move through the same valleys and ridges that leopards use. The first competitor is the Eurasian lynx. In Anatolia, lynx are actually doing surprisingly well in some regions. They live in the Katskar and Lesser Caucasus Mountains, Artvin Province, the Taurus Mountains, and parts of northeastern and northwestern Anatolia, often at relatively high density in forest-steppe mosaics. Lynx usually focus on smaller and medium-sized prey, hares, young ungulates, roe deer, and they are lighter than leopards, so they occupy a slightly different niche. Still, they overlap with leopards in rocky forests and on deer trails, and they can sometimes scavenge from each other's kills. In most cases, leopards dominate lynx at a carcass, but the important point is that they are sharing the same prey base, and in a landscape where wild ungulates are already limited, that overlap matters. Then we have gray wolves. Wolves are probably the strongest competitors of leopards in Turkey. They are widely distributed, with 6,000 to 8,000 wolves estimated in the country, especially in central and eastern Anatolia and along the Black Sea Mountains, and they form packs that specialize in hunting wild boar, deer, and livestock. A single leopard is no match for a whole wolf pack at an open carcass, so leopards in wolf country are forced to use their agility and stealth. They drag kills into thick cover, hunt in steeper cliffs, and move mostly alone and at night to avoid direct clashes. Wolves don't hate leopards, but they do compete strongly for the same hoofed animals, and they will steal kills or even kill a leopard if they catch it in a bad position. Below the wolf in size is the golden jackal, which is almost everywhere in lowlands and foothills of Turkey and even climbs up along valleys into forested mountains. Jackals are opportunists. They eat rodents, fruit, garbage, small livestock, and they are excellent scavengers. For leopards, jackals are not a serious physical threat, but they are competitors for small prey and especially for carcasses. A big male leopard that has just killed a wild goat may come back and find a group of jackals already feeding, or hear them vocalizing around a carcass, attracting more attention, including humans. At the same time, jackals can also become prey for leopards, so the relationship is a mix of competition and predator-prey. The brown bear is the largest carnivore in Turkey, with strong populations along the Black Sea and in eastern Anatolia, overlapping very well with the remaining leopard landscapes. Bears are not specialist hunters of wild ungulates like leopards and wolves. They are omnivores that eat plants, insects, carrion, and occasionally kill larger animals. But when it comes to a free meal, a brown bear will absolutely take over a leopard's kill if it finds it, and no leopard wants to argue with a 200-kilogram bear. This pushes leopards to cache kills in dense cover, in narrow ravines or under boulders where a bear is less likely to find them. So even if the bear is not hunting the same way, it still shapes how leopards use the landscape. Finally, there is one competitor that most people forget: the striped hyena. Historically, striped hyenas ranged across much of Anatolia, but today they are critically endangered in Turkey, surviving in small fragmented populations in the west and especially the southeast, including provinces like Hatay near the Syrian border. Striped hyenas are mainly nocturnal scavengers, but they will also hunt small animals and sometimes attack livestock. In southeastern Turkey, where both species can still overlap, hyenas compete with leopards for carrion and leftover kills, and they can be a serious problem for leopard cubs if they discover a den. In a healthy ecosystem, leopards, wolves, bears, lynx, jackals, and hyenas all form part of a complex carnivore community, each with its own role. But in a landscape like modern Turkey, where prey is limited and human pressure is high, that natural competition becomes much sharper. Every goat, every deer, and every carcass matters. For the last leopards of Turkey, surviving in this crowded guild of predators means being even more secretive, flexible, and careful than usual. And they are already some of the most secretive animals on Earth. Even while people were saying the Anatolian leopard is extinct, some Turkish scientists and NGOs never stopped looking. In 2006, the conservation group Doğa Derneği launched an Anadolu Parsa project as part of their Target Zero Extinction campaign. At the time, they struggled to find support because many institutions believed the species was already gone. But those early efforts helped keep the idea of the leopard alive in public consciousness. In 2013, the Southeast Anatolia Leopard Project was funded through the UNDP GEF Small Grants Program. This project worked with local communities to clarify whether leopards still survived along the Iraqi border and started systematic surveys and camera trapping in that region. In recent years, the Turkish state has become much more active. The General Directorate of Nature Conservation and National Parks under the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry created an action plan for the Anatolian leopard and began placing camera traps across at least 18 provinces. They have repeatedly released photos and videos since 2019, announcing that leopards have been recorded in multiple undisclosed locations. In 2025, the minister even shared new footage, calling the leopard the hidden hero of Anatolia's great mountains and promising to continue protecting it. Scientific studies are also filling in the gaps. Work on habitat preferences shows that Anatolian leopards use a mix of sparse forests, rocky slopes, steppe, river valleys, and high mountain terrain, often in very rugged landscapes with low human density. Other research and reviews, like the 2016 On the Status of the Leopard in Turkey, again paper, underline how precarious the situation is and call for urgent support for local volunteers and conservation groups working in leopard areas. The big challenge now is finding females and understanding whether Turkey still has a breeding population or only non-breeding males. The 2024 news that all 10 camera-trapped animals were male triggered strong concern, but also pushed authorities to expand monitoring and collaborate more closely with scientists to locate females, if they still exist. When we talk about rewilding leopards in Turkey, the first step is not bringing in new animals. It's protecting the last wild individuals, the prey base they depend on, and the ecosystems they share with wolves, lynx, bears, jackals, and hyenas. But in the long term, rewilding ideas can absolutely play a role. Across the border in Russia's Caucasus, conservationists have already started a large-scale Persian leopard reintroduction program. A breeding and training center was built in Sochi National Park in 2009, and since 2016, several leopards have been released into the wild in the Caucasus Biosphere Reserve and Alanya National Park. The goal is to rebuild a self-sustaining population of at least 50 leopards in the northern Caucasus and reconnect them with leopards dispersing from the south. This is one of the most ambitious big cat rewilding projects in the world and provides a model for what might one day happen elsewhere in the range. For Turkey, a realistic rewilding vision has several layers. Secure the current core areas in the southeast and northeast, treating them as the genetic bridge between Iran, Iraq, and the Caucasus. That means strict protection of key mountain blocks like Kuti Dağı, strong anti-poaching measures, and compensation schemes for shepherds who lose livestock to leopards. Restore prey populations, wild goats, chamois, mouflon, red and fallow deer, wild boar, and gazelles, in suitable parts of the Taurus, Pontic, and eastern Anatolian mountains, so that leopards have enough natural food and less incentive to take livestock. Connect Turkey's leopard landscapes to the wider Caucasus rewilding efforts through transboundary conservation with Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Iran, and Iraq. Corridors along the Zagros, Taurus, and Caucasus ranges would allow leopards to move, mix, and recolonize old habitats, and would also benefit wolves, bears, lynx, and many herbivores. In a later stage, if natural recovery is not enough, Turkey could consider carefully planned reinforcement or reintroduction using Persian leopards from strong populations, for example Iran, or from conservation breeding programs linked to the Caucasus reintroduction. But this would only be ethical once habitat, prey, and human tolerance are strong enough to give released animals a real chance. If that vision works, the last leopards of Turkey could become the first leopards of a rewilded European West Asian mountain network, stretching from the Black Sea to Iran. Right now, the future of the leopard in Turkey, and therefore the future of Europe's southernmost leopards, is balanced on a knife edge. One path is tragic but simple. If no females survive in Turkey, and if immigration from neighboring countries is too weak, the population inside the country could quietly fade away over the next few decades. In that scenario, Turkey would lose a big part of its natural heritage, and Europe would lose one more fragment of its original megafauna. The other path is harder, but full of hope. Turkey continues to expand monitoring, finds females, protects key landscapes strongly enough that leopard numbers can slowly rise, and seriously restores both prey populations and tolerance for large predators. At the same time, Caucasus rewilding projects succeed, Iran's stronghold remains intact, and cooperation between countries grows. In that scenario, the Anatolian leopard could shift from being a ghost cat surviving in single digits to a small but stable population connected to a larger regional network of leopards across West Asia and the Caucasus. So when we talk about the last leopards of Turkey, we are not just talking about a rare animal in one country. We're talking about a bridge between continents, between Europe and Asia, between the past world of lions and leopards in the Mediterranean and a possible future where big predators return to restored landscapes. We're also talking about an animal that almost nobody ever sees, a silent, secretive hunter, moving between wolves and bears in the night, leaving only tracks, camera trap flashes, and old stories behind. As always, let me know in the comments what you think. Should Turkey and its neighbors invest more in leopard conservation and rewilding? How do you imagine a future where leopards again roam the mountains above the Black Sea and the Eastern Mediterranean? Thank you for watching, and thank you for joining me on this journey through the last leopards of Europe. In the next episodes, we'll keep exploring the hidden histories and possible futures of our lost megafauna.